Hello, listeners. It's Mallory Wilsey, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network, and I want to take just a moment to tell you about another show on Enrollify that I know you'll love. Mastering the Next is a cutting edge podcast exploring the future of graduate, online, and non traditional education through the lens of technology and artificial intelligence. Staying competitive in the world of graduate student recruitment and enrollment means keeping up with the ever evolving tech trends in higher ed. Join Dr. Ray Lutsky, VP of Strategic Partnerships at Element 451, as he explores what's next at the dynamic intersection of student recruitment and leading edge technology. Each episode will explore future trends and the technologies shaping the academic landscape of the 21st century. Listeners will be equipped with strategies to meet the evolving needs of today's online and non traditional learners. New episodes drop every other Friday, and you can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search Mastering the Next wherever you get your podcasts.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Navigating International Recruitment, a special 5-part Pulse Check series where we dive deep into the ever-changing currents of global student recruitment and support. I'm your host, Kin Sejpal at the University of Redlands, and I'm thrilled to be your guide through this journey that is also very deeply personal to me. There is no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to attracting and supporting international students. Each country, continent, and culture presents its own unique set of circumstances. In the next few episodes, my hope is to bring in expertise who will help uncover innovative strategies and best practices that will empower you to not only attract international students, but also to create an inclusive and supportive environment where they can thrive. Join me as we embark on this journey together, exploring the boundless opportunities that international education offers. Hi, Cynthia. Nice to see you.
Hi, great to see you as well.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I know you and I have connected a little bit as SoCal natives. I don't think it's native though. I'm a transplant. I don't know if you are a native, but I'm so excited to have met you at some conferences and learning more about your work. And after learning that you were at Westcliff University, which is predominantly international and done really well in international recruitment and marketing, I knew I had to bring you into this series.
Yeah, it was a pleasure meeting you a couple years ago and staying connected with you. And I'm happy to share my experience at Westcliff with the marketing side of things as well as at Pepperdine.
You know, you've been at institutions that have had a sizable international population. Now, has that been intentional or happenstance? Or talk to us a little bit about your journey to finding yourself in places and organizations with international students.
Yeah, it wasn't intentional. Initially, I'd gone to Pepperdine to get my degree and was working at Experian in corporate marketing. Made great connections at Pepperdine with the marketing professor that I had and was introduced to the dean and really jump started Pepperdine into the digital world with PPC and marketing automation and some different factors. So really, when I came on board, I was more aware of the domestic audience and became responsible for supporting part of their international market and their marketing for their full-time program, which took place at Pepperdine in Malibu. So there were some specific challenges around that. It was predominantly Chinese at the time that I came on, at least the business program full-time, and many of the programs that were focused around finance were heavily Chinese. And in that, we also wanted to diversify with people from other countries and even the States. Now, given the business program, the professional format at night was not highly international. So at Pepperdine, there were different target audiences for different programs. And the fully employed program, which was a nighttime program, wasn't as diverse as the MBA day program. And that program had 90% Chinese students at the time. And the challenge and goal there was to diversify that program to be more international and to have
Mm-hmm.
more domestic students in the program
Yeah.
because the Chinese students wanted to be with domestic students.
Right. Right. For them, if it's a study abroad, if you will, then they want to interact with people from different cultures and Americans in particular, I would imagine. You were at Westcliff for a few years. And Westcliff, for those of our listeners who don't know, they have about 6,000 students from 108 countries, and it's 80 to 85% international. So clearly, whether it's Pepperdine with the Chinese audience, which again you were looking to diversify, but it sounds like at Westcliff it was pretty diversified given the number of countries that are represented. Clearly, something was working there. Talk to us a little bit about what made Westcliff so international.
It has a lot to do with the owner, the family is of an international background. They're
Mm.
Vietnamese. They wanted to bring a U.S. education and make it affordable to anybody that was interested in
Oh, love
that.
that. So he is, when you say owner, so I'm guessing that it's set up as a company or like a private for-profit institution.
It is set up that way. It is a California benefit. It works on the behalf of doing the right thing. So
Yeah,
sometimes there's that feeling that nonprofits are out there to take advantage of individuals, and that isn't their goal. It is to help serve the international population and to give back quite a bit. So there's, I think, over $3 million of scholarships that had been given out this past year to
wow,
domestic and international students.
that's amazing. So how does an institution like that work? Like if it's predominantly international, what does your program look like? What happens during things like the pandemic, for instance, which I know some institutions that were heavily reliant on international populations took a little bit of a hit there because of the student mobility or lack thereof. But I don't believe that was the case for you.
The key is really understanding your target market, right? And target and understanding what they're interested in and building products that support that journey, right? So with the international audience, they want to stay here. They want to have an opportunity to work here or have internships. They want something that's affordable, something that's flexible for their work schedule. So all of those things, they were very thoughtful about how they developed their programs to meet the needs of the international students. And the domestic audience is very different than the international audience. So trying to use the same types of programs to target different students and different populations doesn't work. I'm sure you've
Right.
experienced that as well.
I love that we are talking about product because essentially the program is the product, and if your product is the same across both domestic and international audiences, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, is it broad enough in terms of its applicability and its relevance to both demographics of students, both domestic and international. So I love the intentionality behind designing programs that were meant for international students.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And as it applies to COVID, um, one of the benefits of being at Westcliff, and they've been around since 1993, they are very innovative and flexible. So when the concerns came up and different issues around policy were restrictive and were causing many international students to either leave or not have a place to go to school because the country shut down. There were so many issues during that time. Westcliff was very proactive in ensuring that we were doing everything we could to adjust to what was happening and foresee it and being, but at the same time being very concerned about the students and the employees. So what are the things that we needed to do to ensure that the students were able to continue to study? How did we pivot quickly? Coming up with different game plans in case different scenarios occurred, even giving people grace for their student tuition. So the leadership had made decisions to not, prevent people from continuing their education if they were having financial
Oh,
difficulties and
wow.
hard times. So um, it was just very empathetic, thoughtful, uh, quick to get our leadership together and say, how do we address these things and how do we meet the international student needs during this time?
So then how did you even bring a class in? I mean, I love the fact that with current students, you all really showed a lot of flexibility and not just showed, but did it, walk the walk, if you will. But, sometimes one might argue like getting international enrollment in a pandemic year, did you offer, did you offer webinars? Like, how did that work? Did that look different in your case or in the case of Westcliff, I mean?
Not from the sense that people weren't traveling, right? So
Right.
it was difficult to get people first time visas from other countries. However, there are plenty of F1 students, if you will, which are students are that are already here in the United States, and they were able to transfer to
Mm,
Westcliff. And part of that was because we were very receptive to understanding what was happening and ensuring that we kept our international population.
hmm. So transfer students is also a significant portion of your student body. When you talk about international students at Westcliff, you're not always talking about their home country and bringing them from their home country straight to Westcliff, but you might be also talking about where they are currently studying, perhaps in the US, and bringing them to Westcliff domestically. So let's dive a little bit into the marketing piece. It sounds like there were at least two types of marketing initiatives or strategies that needed to be devised, one with international students who are abroad and one with international students who are here. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, and Westcliff also had domestic marketing that we were promoting, as well as athletes, student athletes, and eventually
Mm,
many of our soccer players were international. So there were definitely many different segments in that area of marketing around the international side of it. Truly, the benefit was the success that Westcliff was already having, and it we were walking the talk. So many schools, have a lot of diversity in their pictures and project that, but aren't actually, that is not the culture. That's not what's happening in the classroom. So with Westcliff, that was the case. Our media days are our students, right? For the most part. So we are able
mm-hmm.
to bring people in that represent the population that is currently in the school. So there's not stock photos. Also understanding what drew people to Westcliff and leveraging that. Also doing testimonials of people from different countries is key. Also understanding what works in those countries and for those international students.
Mm-hmm.
That's marketing 101, right? Understand your target audience,
Right.
and it's 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 a lot easier to, if you will, sell a product if you have somebody talking about it from the country or talking about their experience there. And so not only from a marketing standpoint, but from word of mouth, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
that is huge in the international space in the market, and the students will tell other students.
Hey, it's Mallory. Exciting news! I'm hosting the Engage Summit in Raleigh on June 25th and 26th, and I'd love to meet you there. Together, we'll dive into the mind of the modern student, what fires them up, how they interact, and what they expect in today's digital age, and how tools like AI help put them in the driver's seat of their education. We have some terrific speakers, including our closing keynote, New York Times bestselling author Jeff Selingo. Sessions will dig into practical ideas and innovative strategies to get your team more student centered and ready to adopt AI. And many of your favorite Enrollify hosts are presenting too, like Jamie Hunt, Jenny Lee Fowler, and Brian Gross. Use the discount code Enrollify50 for an extra $50 off your registration. Learn more and register at engage.element451.com. We can't wait to see you there.
I can testify to that. I mean, I'm not of this era of international students. My time was long, long time ago when I learned about higher education and about my alma mater. But, it really was heavily driven by word of mouth. And I think that doesn't really change. I mean, maybe the word of mouth is less talking face to face kind of word of mouth, but it's word of mouth maybe through social and other digital channels, but it's still sort of quote unquote word of mouth.
Definitely plays into the factor of how people hear about a good experience or a product, if you will, an institution that caters to understanding the needs of different populations. So,
Yeah.
like you were talking about, even if social media, so at Pepperdine, in order to understand the different countries and markets, it's important to understand your students that are already coming from there, understand the environment of that culture, the buying process, the research process. We had recruiters that would go to different parts of countries to meet with prospects with students that were alumni at some point from that region. So
Hmm.
culture is key, right? So if people are going to feel more tied to something and more confident about a choice when they're talking to somebody that's from their same culture, that's had a positive experience, or understand that it's about relationships as
Yes.
well. That's a key factor too, especially at Pepperdine. It was sending alumni that were of that nationality to meet with the prospects. That helped a lot with the recruitment funnel because many times at Pepperdine, we wouldn't be quite sure who would show up, right, until the day. So one tactic that really worked, and I have to emphasize the importance of marketing working with recruitment or sales. That is critical. The two need to work together and understand the target market and ensure those two things are working together in order to present a unified front. And that applies to having events together, marketing, understanding the target audience, interacting with that target audience. Sometimes as marketers, we sit behind our computers and create great ideas, but we're not the closest one to the consumer.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think there is value to be gained from meeting with boots on the ground people, and then for them to know what marketing is doing at a broad awareness level to reinforce some of that messaging. What about advertising? So, you talked about events and you talked about outreach and some of these relationship building activities. When it comes to paid media, and I know you started again with Pepperdine to really kick off their some of their digital marketing tactics, like PPC and things like that. What about, I can't even imagine putting my arms around advertising domestically, let alone internationally, because I can barely, there's never enough resources, financial resources, given how expensive advertising can get. So, did you try any paid media and advertising in international markets, and how did that go?
At Pepperdine, we probably spent, I would say it was a significant amount of money testing international marketing in different countries, including Mexico, India, a few other countries as well through Facebook, even Instagram at the time, and LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn actually internationally um, wasn't as successful as some of the domestic marketing during that time, but internationally, it was tough. It was very tough. And that's where the conclusion came that because we would get a lot of leads. So we did some webinars, we did some partnerships with different marketing agencies in other countries, and we would get quite a few inquiries. Sometimes we would get 30 or 40 people on a webinar, but the conversion was very low, very low.
Hmm.
So after a couple years of trying many different things, we did step back and decide, okay, we really need the boots on the ground with the recruitment. And that is where the conclusion came from, is where are students? So if they're on WeChat, then be on WeChat. We had students that became alumni that then worked for us in recruitment that were Chinese or of different nationalities, and they were able to speak in the native language and be on the platform that the students were on or the prospects were on.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Mm-hmm.
was critical, as well as being a part of this strategy of figuring out what's the best way to engage these prospects to ensure that they show up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's interesting because yeah, what you did is exactly what I would try is like let's test some advertising, let's kind of pilot that, and even if you have a high number of inquiries, yeah, what's the conversion to applicants and enrollees? And if that is not panning out, then we do have to rethink. But it sounds like you use data kind of to make that case and not do a spray and pray approach, which is kind of costly to do in an international market. I won't lie. Like, you have to narrow down which markets you want to focus on. And then, even in those markets, you have just a variety of ways in which you can engage and reach prospective audiences.
Very true. And as Americans trying to market from here, it's difficult, right? What
Yeah.
works here doesn't work in other countries. So who to partner with, agencies in other countries, what are they doing? How do you know how things are being translated? How do you know who to trust, right? So taking the time and the money to actually narrow down what market you're going after, which micro segment, going there or having somebody from there support the efforts, investing in that resource and that type of market research is important.
Yeah, absolutely. Could not agree more. So, now you are teaching international marketing. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, I'm teaching at Westcliff, and I'm getting my DBA there now. So
Congratulations. That's so exciting. So, you know, um, one of the things that we like to say often is, sometimes we are better at teaching what to do than doing what to do, because sometimes higher ed can be the one of the last adopters of certain things, although the first to kind of bring that into the classroom or into the student experience space. So what do you think international marketing can look like, in the real world, that you perhaps are teaching about it but not really seeing many people practicing it, especially when it comes to higher education?
while teaching it, some of the same principles, right? So that we just talked about, which is understanding your target market and the cultural differences and even the micro segments up within
Mm-hmm.
that. What works in one country doesn't work in another country. There's been so many examples of how companies have failed because they haven't understood the cultural aspects. Starbucks going into Australia, right?
Yes.
The way that food and culture plays into um, how to market and approach different cultures is critical. So that remains the same. Marketing 101, understand your target audience, do the research, understand your competitors, right? Understand your
Yeah.
competitors. I think that plays a huge role in understanding whether or not you've got the right product, and if there's a niche in there or a way that you're going to compete that's going to be different, right? So that the
Absolutely.
same philosophies still apply with international marketing. It is testing, it is understanding, taking the time to have focus groups. And if you're fortunate enough to have some international students, listening to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Taking the time, and you can do some of that testing as well. And that's kind of the guerrilla bootstrap way of doing it, as well as your alumni. I don't think we take enough time to reflect on that and listen to where we've already been successful and to build on that.
No, it's marketing one on one, but it definitely bears repeating, especially when we talk about our target market in the international space. One of my pet peeves is really just when we kind of group them in one category. Even when you look at domestic market, you're not really lumping them all in the same category, because your first generation student is going to be very different from a legacy student, and somebody from in-state is going to be very different from out of state, and so on and so forth. And so we have these various levels of segmentation, and I know there's only so much you can segment before it becomes too small to be very effective, or maybe too small to be efficient, cost efficient rather. But at the same time, it's just something we have to do in the international space, is really understanding not just the country, but like you said, the micro segments that make up that country. And sometimes when we talk in continents too, it's like, oh, Latin America has XYZ, and then Africa we have, and that to me also feels a little bit jarring, because it's just there's so many nuances to consider and think about, and so different. I mean, it's one of the things that it takes more work at the front end to really get to the bottom of your key demographic in the international market space, and hone in on who they are and how they consume information, and what do they seek, and what are their motivations. But I think the ROI can be tremendous.
You bring up a fantastic point that if you're not going to spend the money up front, you're going to spend it on the back end, right? Probably three times the amount. So taking a moment and saying, hey, why are we going in this particular area? How do we narrow it? How do we do a little bit of research up front, spend a little bit of time understanding, so then the probability of success is higher, right? So
Right.
I can tell you that I've seen it many times. I've been a part of it. um, when leadership says, hey, just go out and try something, all right, you can't try something and be successful for 20 or 30,000 in another market. So if
Right.
you're planning on spending 100, 150 and it's not successful, right? You've just spent more money than spending 20 or 30 upfront to
Right.
ensure that it's going to be something that is positioned correctly, that it's going to be received well, that you have the right recruiter. So another aspect of marketing, which Kotler, the grandfather of marketing,
Oh,
touts,
yes.
is is really aligning your sales and marketing strategies, ensuring that they're not going in two different directions, and having recruitment teams that are skilled at sales, which I've seen is often not the case in higher ed,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
not having people that are highly skilled at sales to support whatever marketing effort you're doing is going to affect your conversion.
I love talking marketing, and Philip Kotler is obviously one of the gurus. And so, evidently, you've done great work in international marketing space, and evidently, you are a great instructor for this too, because you're going back to the basics, but you're also kind of aligning to some of the best practices about marketing in general, and then how you apply that to international marketing. So this has been extremely valuable, Cynthia. I loved digging into this topic with you. If people want to find you, where can they find you?
I think the best way is LinkedIn. I'm
Okay.
on LinkedIn, Cynthia Chilton. There's not too many of us, and I'm in the Southern California area as well. And I do want to say that it is not, I appreciate the accolades and the recognition for that. I have to say, though, it really starts from a great leaders, great CEO, having the vision, supporting it, and having teams around that support that mission in
Mm-hmm.
international marketing. As you know, one department, marketing, can't do it alone. You have to have all the different student services. You have to have the recruitment. You have to have all of the other departments supporting that initiative. So, although I'd like to say it was my success in all of these things, it by far wasn't, but it was something that I've learned by and helped support and, really helped me understand the differences in culture that and the importance of listening to your students and your alumni
Yeah.
when marketing.
Absolutely. None of us in higher ed or in really any organization can drive success on our own. We really rely on our partners, and they rely on us. So I appreciate that acknowledgement that you made for others that bring their perspectives to the table. So with that, it's a wrap. Cynthia, it was so good to talk to you formally, but I know we'll be continuing some conversations about maybe meeting up in California and going to the beaches and whatnot. People on the East Coast, don't be jealous. But that's all we have for you today. Thank you again, Cynthia, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Ken. Appreciate it.
This Pulse Check mini-series has been brought to you by Pathify. Gone are the days of clunky interfaces, disjointed systems, and massive, unhelpful link farms. Centralize all your systems with Pathify so that students see the information that matters to them in a digital experience that actually makes sense. From prospective students through alumni, it's about time the student experience started looking and acting like a consumer app from this century. Visit pathify.com for more. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.